I'm doing games in 30 years. It's the only thing I can do. I skipped my university, so finished school, started making games in the 80s, and that's all I do since 30 years. But I nearly did every job you can count. I was CEO of a public listed company. That's as high as I can get. So my career is over. You know, you cannot get higher than that. I can get president maybe. Well. And I was an artist, programmer, everything. For 10 years now, I'm consulting various clients worldwide about free-to-play in online game design. I always say and online game design because free-to-play monetization is always tied into online game design. You cannot kind of, just have a monetization, just plug it into something and that's it. There are some of the companies you might know. Recently I did a couple of new ones, Techland from Poland, Pixel Federation, Remedy, Game Desire, some of them are known. I don't go into details here, but it's basically most companies I know. But let's go to the topic about loot boxes. Thing is that loot boxes are really old. They're not something new. They're not kind of being reinvented. It's just that recently there's some spotlight on what loot boxes should do and what not. So if you go into the headlines of the past, you see that there's some scandals going around, that there are official governments, examining loot boxes in games and deciding if they're gambling or not, if they should be legal or not. There might be some consequences for our games who use random distributed items for the rewards. And I was wondering, why the heck did they, have this scandal now? And I'm using loot boxes since like 20 years, so I'm like, why now? And the main reason was that Electronic Arts used the loot boxes in the worst possible way. And I found it interesting to actually, educate people then, what is a good and what is a bad way. Why do some games with loot boxes, don't cause this stir in the player base, why some players are really unhappy about that. And I hope to shed some light on that. So in terms of history, the first recorded use of loot boxes is actually baseball collectible cards in the US. That was from 1868. They were just collectible cards. No game behind it, nothing. It's just kind of, the collection stuff. And that's really crazy shit in the USA still today. And some of these cards are worth, a lot of money. The revolution actually came in 1993 with Magic the Gathering because he attached actually a game to collectibles, and he made them tradable as well. And there's a system behind the trade and everything. So this is like the most successful loot box of human history. And it's still strong today. And if you as a game designer haven't played Magic the Gathering, you should. There is a lot of stuff in Magic which mobile games today have basically adapted. The elemental system is coming from there, rarity distribution is from there, limited deck sizes, everything you can basically find in modern games, is actually from this game. And the trick they did is that in this booster pack, which is the loot box, they have a fixed distribution of cards. So there are common, uncommon, and rare cards in there, and they guarantee one rare. So when you buy such a loot box, there's always a rare. So when you are someone who is playing this game intensively, you're buying a loot box, a booster pack, you open it, take out the rare, and throw away the rest. This is basically how Magic pros are buying these packs. But of course, normal people actually use all of these cards. And that actually led to the fact that some of these cards, like this Alpha Mint Black Lotus, which is from early 1993, is actually worth 27,000. When I wrote this talk, the last Black Lotus sold for 60,000. I sold mine for 200 about 15 years ago. That was a mistake. I should have kept it. But oh well, and it was really in perfect condition. Nevertheless, the special thing on Magic was it's a 3-layered game, right? You have the game itself. It's a duel between two wizards summoning creatures. So Hearthstone is a Magic clone, basically. You have the trade itself, because if I have duplicates, I trade with you because you have cards I need, and I give you cards you need. Because you can have every card you own 4 times in the deck. So if you have a rare card, you actually not only need 1, you need actually 4. And the collection aspect, of course, that you want to have full collections of the expansions. And even that Hearthstone ripped off. But Hearthstone has problems, more problems than Magic has, and Magic solved them like 15 years ago, and Hearthstone didn't know, and they're trying now to solve their problems, and they just should look back in history, but that's something. In terms of loot boxes in mobile games, which kind of dominated the loot box field, there was a game called Raid of Bahamut, which used them from Dina. It was a big hit in Japan. It was quickly succeeded by Puzzle and Dragons, and Puzzle and Dragons put a really good system of loot boxes in their game, and they invented or polished the fusion and gacha system. That was 2013, so that's pretty long ago, right? No scandal, nothing. Players were really happy with this. But they had problems, and the first game which solved their problems was Summoner's War. And Summoner's War is the most successful RPG in the West, although it's done by a Korean company. Soul Seeker, by one of my favorite Chinese companies, Lilith, has reinvented another style. So these two RPG styles here are the foundation of most RPGs in the App Store. So whatever RPG you play, they basically copy-paste a lot of stuff from these two games. So if you take Soul Seeker, the Western version was a game called Heroes Charge, and if you take Heroes Charge plus Summoner's War combat system, you have Star Wars. So Star Wars basically copy-pasted both games into one, and they are doing well, pretty well. EA is pretty happy, and there are like hundreds of games I can count, which are based on these games, which are again based on that, which is based on Raid of Bahamut, and Raid of Bahamut is based on Magic the Gathering. So that's the reason. If you're a game designer, play Magic the Gathering. Puzzle and Dragons is like the first loot box game which went past 1 billion yearly revenue. That's quite a feat. Back then, 5 years ago, that was a lot of money. Now it's like, oh, another game is just 1 billion, right? But back then it was really special. And they have, when I stopped playing, the game had 2,000 different monsters, and now they have like 5,000, so they are just adding like crazy. And the interesting thing on Puzzle and Dragons is that it's so pure game mechanic. There's no fluff, no story, nothing behind it, that you can actually learn really well how fusion and evolution systems should work. So this is one example. If you want to get this monster, you have to collect all this, evolve them, level them, do all this, and then finally you have like this godlike monster above there. This is one of the systems they invented, and this is a very important friction system to create time for the player he needs in order to reach, this super monster. And this is just one super monster. There are hundreds. Now, Puzzle and Dragons, interestingly, 2013, $1.5 billion, and then it actually went down. And from history, we know that very strong online free-to-play games live forever, and they don't have that curve. Usually they kind of, dwindling like horizontal. So they seem to have a problem, and I call that Endgame Diminishing Returns. So if you're a spender in this game and you're playing it for a long time, you're running out of items to spend your money upon. Because once you have 100 really godlike strong monsters, there's no reason to get another one. And this is an inherent problem on their system. And Summoner's War was the first game to actually see this and fixed it. In 2010, Team Fortress 2 did a loot box system. I don't know if you remember. You could actually find hats inside the loot boxes, and they were really successful, although the hats didn't do anything but just looks. That was like the first try on PC where the West said, no, what is this shit? Now, literally, there was like this game, saying this is not a really gaming system, etc. And it kind of died down. But then 2018, Star Wars Battlefront 2 happened, and that blew apart a lot of things. First, it nearly blew up the team. A lot of people left the team. The guy who was responsible for that project on a C-level left Electronic Arts due to this scandal. So it had consequences. The share price dropped. You can imagine, right? Players said this is, the worst thing you ever did, and the share price dropped. So there was a consequence here, but that never happened in any other game. So let's see if we can dissect the loot box itself and find out, what Battlefront actually did wrong. So in Puzzle and Dragons, you are finding this loot box, which is an egg. And the egg gives you a random encounter, and this random encounter you can actually power up, and when you power it up, it is a better monster. Of course, in the same dungeon you find gold and XP. The XP is for leveling up, and the gold is actually to pay for this level up system. And when you abstract that, there's a dungeon, a mechanic, whatever it is. It could be a dungeon, it could be a sports game, it could be a Clash Royale battle type thing, and you find a gacha system, and inside, you basically power up the player. So random drops plus theme drops, event drops, and free drops. You always give something free to the player. Plus, of course, you have players who actually buy these things. And the important thing what Puzzle & Dragons did is that time equals money. So when you're playing this for free, the game, you get like a random drop every couple of minutes. And you open up like 50 of these gacha systems per day by just playing casually. If you pay, you can actually open up more. So the chances that you get a rare monster is higher. At least that is the impression. That's of course wrong, because the chances always are the same. It's just that because you draw more per day, you're actually getting more of these rare monsters because you compress time. So instead of opening up 50 per day, you're opening up, let's say, 500 per day, meaning that you have a time acceleration of times 10. This is all, how the system should work. And it's a fair system because, this is how free-to-play works, right? You either invest time, or to accelerate time, you can invest money. So you have a drop by activities, or you can actually cash in to get these drops. You get a random item or monster, and this powers up the player itself, his representation, either his character, his monster box, whatever he tries to achieve in the game itself. We know that system from a game called World of Warcraft. The only difference here is that their loot system was boss-based. So you had to kill a boss, and he did random drops. And depending what he dropped, you could use it to power yourself up. So the only thing which is different between Puzzle & Dragons and World of Warcraft is that in Puzzle & Dragons you find these eggs everywhere, these things to open. In World of Warcraft you actually had to walk to a boss to kill it, and then it actually dropped the stuff. This is the only difference between World of Warcraft and a loot box system. So the difference here is, the gacha system has a random item drop from you can find any item in this thing, right? So all the items in the game is in this egg, in Puzzle & Dragons. So it's a huge loot table. It's like 5,000 things in there. So the chance to get the one thing you want is really, really small. But that's, where they rely upon. When in World of Warcraft, the loot table is smaller. There are like 10 different items the boss drops, so the chance is pretty high. So if you, kill the boss like 10, 20 times, it's nearly guaranteed you get the item you want. That's not what is here. But nevertheless, here time is money, and here time is items. If you invest time and kill the boss 10, 20 times, it's basically the same thing, and here's like that. So loot boxes per se, in other words, are detached rewards from player activities to make them monetizable. So whenever the player does something in the game, you give him a detached reward. It's like this box you give him, and he can look into it what he got. And that's all what a loot box does. So when government tries to kill loot boxes, they theoretically have to kill loot tables in RPGs as well, because essentially it's the same system. It's just detached. That's all there is. So the question still is there. Why do they cause an uproar in some games and others are okay? And we skip this. So let's see the good and the bad on how you implement them and how you should prevent that. So Overwatch is the most popular first-person shooter on the planet, and the loot box sources here is interesting. By play activities, you roughly get you level up once per hour, and for a level up, you actually get one box. So they don't have the leveling system that you need longer and longer and longer to make a level. It's kind of a horizontal experience, meaning that if you play it, you make a level once per hour. My daughter is level 1,200. 1,200 hours she sank into this game, right? So she had the chance to open 1,200 boxes, and you can actually buy them as well on top, but there's just fluff inside, right? It's pure vanity. There's no power items, nothing. It's just like you can change the look of your character. You also have events where you can get them for free. The Arcade Weekly, for money, a lot of freebies. If you buy Twitch Prime, you get them. A lot of stuff. But nevertheless, remember, Overwatch is a paid game. It's not a free-to-play game. Nevertheless, it's interesting that in this game, no one complained about the loot boxes at all. Actually, most players love it. So just, Remember that. We get back to that. Now, in Summoner's War, there are huge sources where you get the drops from. And these drops, instead of eggs, they drop these scrolls. And the scrolls basically are your sources for the monsters, for your power. And they just differ by type. Like, you know, this is a random monster. This is just a blue one from the blue elemental from water. This is a wind one. This is a light and dark one. And this is a legendary one. So it's just, you know, summons a more powerful monster. But nevertheless, you can buy them. And in here, time is money as well, because, you know, when you invest a lot of time, you get this premium currency, and then you can actually buy the premium pack, and the premium pack is 11 scrolls, and you can just open 11 scrolls. So this is, you know, basically their time equals money and fair play system. Plus, they have a fusion system. In Hall of Heroes, you get the monsters from, and the event monsters. This is interesting that they have different sources for monsters. In Puzzle & Dragons, you have one source, it's the egg. In here, you have multiple sources. The reason is that they found out that there is a kind of bad luck problem. There are players who really invested in your game, but they just have bad luck. So they opened like 1,000 of these scrolls, and they just got crap monsters. Remember, it's a random system, right? So it can happen. But it should not happen. Like, everybody should be happy. So what they did is that some game-changing monsters, they removed from the random drops, and you can get them in another way, through a fusion system. You remember that diagram with the complex stuff? It's a little bit easier here. But when you found these monsters, you can basically fuse yourself up to 8 different game-changing monsters. So at least the player is a little bit more happy because he has some monsters to beat the system. So when you play with random stuff like loot boxes, you should think about the players who are extremely lucky, and you should think about players who are really unlucky. You know, there should be some small little balancing effect here, to, you know, so that players are actually happy. They have another system called Hall of Heroes. You can grind a monster once per week. It's changing every week. Once per month, they have a rare monster you can grind for. So this is another way of doing it. So if you play this game for a long time, you get basically everything you need. And with a long time in Summoner's War, I mean not weeks, not months. I mean years. I play this game for 5 years now. So, you know, if you want to evaluate this game, you have to play it for a year, and, you know, otherwise you don't get it. So another thing. Clash Royale. Clash Royale has a loot box system based on chests. Inside are your cards, and these cards basically you can construct your deck from. It's like Magic the Gathering. But here they also use the cards to power up your cards. So the cards themselves have a level up system. It's like, you know, if you have 20 different cards, it's like having 20 different characters, and you can level them up with paying for gold and collecting these characters. It's basically the same system like Summoner's War, only that they're using cards and not monsters. It's theoretically identical. But the sources of these cards are, you know, many. You get them from quests, events, clan wars, challenges, tournaments, PvP leagues, etc. Lots of activities. All the stars basically was after launch. So this is the 4 sources when they launch, and this is like they added over time. That shows that there is a certain effect in these games when you live operate them, is that it is of your best interest to give players more items. So when you're based on a loot box system and everything is inside, you want to give players a lot of these items, because every item you give him and he finds cool, he invests more time in, because you have to level up, right? You have to level up the card, fuse them, lose them, and so on. You're actually spending more because you're putting more money into this card. So it's of your interest to give him just enough cards to keep him playing, but not enough that he's kind of fully supplied and happy. But, you know, this is a trend which Clash Royale actually realized pretty late. Some oddities they have a delay on your reward. So they give you up to 4 boxes, and you have to wait until they open. In Summoner's War, you buy the boxes and you just open them like Christmas, like, here's my favorite toy, where's my favorite toy, right? You're just opening up. It's a very important moment in the game itself. In here, you got your legendary box and you're like, let's wait some 8 hours. This is like the worst thing ever they put in. And they admitted it is the worst system ever. So don't copy that. That's the reason why they're not using it anymore in future games. But nevertheless, you know, basically if you ignore that time, it's the same system. And no, this is not monetizing really well. Clash Royale does most of their money by selling gold, because gold is the currency to upgrade stuff. This is where the sink is. This is not their moneymaker. Another thing, they were so afraid about the fast progression of players that they wanted to predict the progression. They wanted to cut out the luck factor. So what they did is that the chests you get are not random. They're on a 240 chest rotation. So there's a list of 240 chest types, and you're walking through it. Every player is walking through the same stuff. So after 240 chests, the list starts from scratch, so that they can forecast your progression speed. This is why they did that, right? So you have to understand why this is. But still, Clash Royale has a problem called diminishing returns. Their highest spenders in the game itself, they stop spending. And they don't stop, but they spend less over time. Because if they have their best deck, they don't need new cards. So they don't buy boxes. They don't buy gold to upgrade them anymore. So what do? This is an inherent problem of these systems, and you need to fix that if you launch such a game. Hearthstone, same thing, lots of sources for that, matches, quests, tavern brawls, arena, etc. But even Hearthstone has a diminishing return problem. You see that on their expansion is kind of always dropping off. So whenever they release an expansion, their monetization goes sky high, and just a couple of weeks later, it drops down, and Hearthstone is not even in the charts anymore. So this game is purely expansion driven. So what they do is that, hey, you have your 10 cards, your deck with, and you're elite and you're happy, you stop spending. So they release an expansion and there are better cards inside. So you start the whole process again until you have your deck and you're done, and then you stop spending anymore. And that's the reason why they have like this monetization. And over time, the value of the expansions goes down, because the more content you put into the game, the less value it has. If you only have 1,000 cards, one card is worth a lot. If you have 100,000 cards, one card is worth nothing. So this diminishing return, even over an expansion system, hit them really hard. But they could have learned from Magic the Gathering. They had the same problem. And they could actually learn from them how to fix it. But, it's forgotten history. The internet wasn't there, so it wasn't recorded. Yeah. Okay. So, nevertheless, remember, fair and even distribution and time equals money, This is like the fundamental rule you have to implement. The player base itself spends time and money to gain power. This is your basic system you implement into this game itself. So for this to work, to be fair, the frequency of free openings need to be high. Remember, in Overwatch is once per hour. So when you ask me how often should someone open this gacha box, I say 1 per hour minimum. In the latest games from Asia who are using gacha, like, in all games, their frequency is once per minute. You can imagine what content you need in order to support that. It's not hundreds of items, it's thousands of items. But nevertheless, in order to feel fair, the frequency of opening has to be high. And the only thing spenders do is to increase that frequency. This is the basic rule, so that loot boxes feel fair. That you don't say, only players can get this. Or you say, I have to grind for 4 weeks until I actually get my Darth Vader costume. This is exactly what Star Wars Battlefront did wrong. Their frequency was too low. You're rewarding players. You give them items. So give it to them as often as you can without disrupting your progression time. The other thing is that, for this to work, there should be alternate paths to power to compensate luck and progress friction. You remember the unlucky guy who is always drawing shit? You should support this guy somehow, that he gets some cool stuff from time to time. And if you ask me, how often should you give big free stuff to the player? It depends on the lifespan of your game. Once per week is a good index. And you need like lots of box content, like really a lot. Meaning that if you need so many monsters or items or cards in your game, you have to think about your pipeline. If you have to produce thousands of these, you have to optimize that pipeline. Because when you're doing expansions in live operations, you have even less time to create them. So the more you automate the pipeline, the more reusable things there are in the game itself for this pipeline, the better it is. So, loot boxes are causing unhappy players when there's exclusive content on just paid boxes. Imagine you're playing this game, you have a wonderful card, and she just spent 10 bucks and got this god monster and is beating the shit out of you. You'll be really unhappy because you cannot afford her monster because you don't want to pay. That should not happen. Meaning that the loot boxes itself should not have exclusive content for players, unless you can grind the currency and buy that loot box as well. So if I can grind for 4 weeks to buy the same box she did, that's fine. But if there's exclusive content for players, hell will break loose. Don't do that. Slow free loot boxes is bad, because when you pay, the frequency is so high You know, I pay $10, I get 20 loot boxes. I can open 20, like, brrrr. Now, if you only open one per day, I just bought 20 days for $10. That should not happen. So the frequency and the matching price, how much you get, you know, should kind of match. You can double the frequency or whatever, but the free player should have enough rewards coming in by just, you know, playing the game on the site. Yeah, the uneven power distribution on lootbox items. There are games which have different lootbox qualities, and they put the crap in the lowest one and the really cool stuff in the highest one. And the highest one you can kind of open once per month, but pairs can open them like once per day. That should not happen as well. So the distribution of power inside your loot box is an important balancing aspect here. The other thing is that the loot box power in competition with the core loot progression power. What I mean with this is that when you progress through the game, you're gaining power. And when that progression doesn't mean anything because the next drop out of the loot box is raising your power like tenfold, the loot box is much more powerful than your progression curve. That should not be. What should happen is that your progression power, by playing the game, is a normal curve. It goes up, and the loot box is just supporting it. That is the primary reason why many games like Summoner's War or RPGs give you a monster, a rare monster, a super powerful monster, but it's on level 1. So you have to level it up, and if it's up leveled, you have to awaken it, and if it's awakened, you have to advance it to 6 stars. It's a process which takes a week. But you're still happy because you got this 5-star monster. It's so rare, you know, and you're so proud, and your guild like, clap, 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 you got it, right? But you have to kind of put a week work into it until it reaches its final power. So remember, if you put power into these boxes, make the power unfold over time by letting the player invest time into it. So happy players, right? Most power items are inside the loot box. That's like a lesson I will repeat that in a second. The free loot boxes have to be frequent. You know, about 1 per hour is good. If you can support a higher frequency, it's even better. Like, as I said, Asian games are really crazy about this. You know, they just throw stuff at you. Rise of Civilizations, the latest game from Lilith Games, if you played that, you know, they're giving you so much stuff in the first couple of minutes, it's just unbelievable. Just play that and you will see what I mean. Sorry. The power items need a good broad balancing, meaning that if there's just normal items and very powerful items, it's not good. So you have to have a kind of power slow up curve so that you can divide that power into parts, and these parts you can make you put into different loot boxes. Otherwise it's not working. Again, this rule to make happy players means that you need a lot of items. It doesn't, you know, if you have just a few, it doesn't work. And here's the key lesson. Loot boxes have to be the center of your power economy. That means that the power I draw from the game itself should all be inside the box. And then open it, and that's where I got my power from. If the loot box is just an alternative to your main one, you're in deep trouble. Because players go the path of the least resistance. So if I can go here to be more powerful, and this is far easier than opening the boxes, I go here. So no one will buy the boxes. If the boxes are easier, you know, I just buy the boxes to be powerful, but I don't go down your progression path. And that's not good either. So here's the thing. This is your progression to power, you know, various game modes and stuff, and you have slow loot boxes. And then there is like this exclusive content in the loot box, which adds to progression and power, and this is not good, right? This is like the best diagram I can come up with. Like the loot boxes are somehow on the side of your progression. It's kind of like a fuel into the normal progression one. What should be is that the loot boxes is your center of power. Everything is inside loot boxes. And then you gain your power, your fusion stuff, your collection, your items, you know, all the alternative sources, and this is basically your progression cycle. This is how it should be. And if you take a look at the games who are doing this, where people don't complain, it's usually working really well. So the key lesson here is that the loot boxes have to be the center of your economy. So if you have a game, and it's already working well, it's playing, and then you say, let's add loot boxes. That's not working. You know, you add on a couple of revenue, but it's not really, you know, players are not really happy about that. So loot box systems needs like tons of content. We talked about that, right? So that's why many of the games use this elemental system. You remember that, right? You know, fire beats wind or nature, and nature beats water, and water beats fire. And then you have light and dark on the side here. The Magic the Gathering system is much more complex, but it's a different story. There is a new trend that actually these are 4 besides the light and dark system. The only reason they did that, besides the combat system, is to multiply any item they put into the game. So let's say I design a monster. This is my monster. I design it, the artist is happy, the creative director is happy, you assign the power to it, you have one monster just created for your loot box system. 1 of 1,000, that's not good. But if I have a system like that, I let the phone recolor the thing under guidance of the artist, and I can suddenly, instead of having 1 monster, I have 5. That's cool, right? So if I create 100 monsters, I suddenly have 500 in the game, because that system basically multiplies it by 5. This is the main reason they actually came up with that system, because they need so many monsters. Because all these monsters, items, cards, etc., are living in icons, the cards themselves are icons, just larger ones, and in the inventory you have smaller ones. You need a kind of dissected icon system, because if you draw an item for every single item you have, that artist who is drawing all the icons, he will jump out of the window, flee, leave your company, go to India and become a Hindu, because no artist should be raped to create 1,000 icons. So you have to have a system which makes it much easier. And there, remember, if you have an item which you can recolor, just this system, it's the number of backgrounds, the number of frames for rarity, the number of icons multiplies, and suddenly I did 40 icons by just creating like 4 different things. Sorry. So, and you have to think about that pipeline in advance. So, there is a special case for AAA games. If you release a premium game for $60 and you want to put loot boxes inside, you have a conflicting player base. On one hand, they said, I paid $60, I expect to own the whole game. I don't want to add money into it, right? On the other hand, AAA games are so expensive now that you have to have revenue sources into it. So that's the reason why publishers like Electronic Arts add loot boxes to these games. But here's the problem. If you add the loot box to the main experience, they're hurting your player base and you have that scandal erupting. But if you somehow add the loot boxes to a side system, suddenly it works and players love it. And the best example here to learn that from is GTA 5. GTA 5, have the main experience with the story and with the city and everything, and everybody was happy. And then they have GTA Online as a side path where you can actually buy a lot of stuff and sink money into it. And meanwhile, GTA Online is making more money than the main game GTA 5. And you know that this thing still sells millions every month, because people are actually engaging in the online mode. So the key lesson here is that if you want to have loot boxes in your AAA game which you sell for premium, you must add another game mode where you put them in. So your main experience is untouched, but your side game mode, if it's an online mode, a story mode, a versus mode, whatever, this is where the loot box system is in, under all the rules we just discussed. And then it suddenly works, without players getting angry. And this is all EA needed to learn in order to fix that. Does anyone know how EA fixed the loot box problem? Anyone remember? They removed it, yes, and they have a company-wide order not to use loot boxes in any game. This is how serious it is for them, right? Of course, this is not a good strategy, but one competitor less. That's okay. So let's talk about the diminishing returns. We already touched that system, right? If you have a loot box system and the power is inside the loot box system, you will buy this problem with it automatically, because the more items I have, the less I need. It's the main problem, right? If you have 1,000 monsters, or let's say Clash Royale, they have I don't know how many cards they have now, let's say 60. And I have my 12, 16 cards leveled up and everything, I'm happy with my decks there, I don't need the rest. So I actually stop spending, or spend less. And that problem you need to fix, right? So this is basically the loop, if I have enough, I spend less. So the standard mechanics other games do is that they slow down your progress by the loot box. So this is one way doing it. So you need these 4 rare monsters, and if you develop them, you can actually get this rare monster. So this is one way slowing down the power progression of the player itself, and it's called fusion, special fusion, and it's easy to Google how that works. And fusion itself is a system which eats tons of monsters. In Clash Royale, you need another card to level it up, right? So if you have a legendary card, you need this card in order to, to upgrade that. So it's a very slow process. The more rare a card is, the more powerful it is, the slower its upgrade is. So this is another friction system they put on the players to slow them down. Because you expect players to play this game for like a year, if possible. Summoner's War itself invented a rune system. The rune system itself is very complicated or very complex to learn, but on the other hand, it's very easy to use. So in the beginning, you just put runes on a monster and you're happy. But over time, you have to optimize it. Here's the secret of Summoner's War. What monsters you have doesn't play any role. It is the runes, which is the main power base in the whole game. The runes themselves here can triple the power of your monsters. In the beginning, you will all play this game. Oh, I got this cool monster. Oh, look what I have, right? The monster box is your major challenge. But this is basically a misleading information, because the runes themselves is a triple nested gacha system. That's how rare a really superior rune is for pro gaming. So if you want to have endgame runes, you find about 1 rune per month. And each monster needs 6. If you have 100 monsters, times 6, times month. That's the reason why I played since 5 years. So it's one way countering the diminishing return problem, and they don't have that problem with this, right? They basically shift you when you have enough in your monster box to that system of the runes. And if you have enough runes, basically the next system need to come, and they're just working on that. So this is basically the power curve here, right? In the beginning it goes really fast until you have the runes, and the runes is a very slow advanced thing. And it takes a long time to actually evaluate that, how it works. And they put another system on top now, but this is going into too much detail here. There are alternatives to loot boxes, and it will go fast because we're running out of time. If you don't want loot boxes, or if Electronic Art doesn't permit you to use loot boxes, let's say it like that, or your publisher says no loot boxes, there are ways to do that. Remember, loot boxes are detached rewards from the player to monetize them. This is all they are. So there's an activity, you get a reward, and you power up your whole base, and the loot box yourself is basically your reward. So let's see how we can actually do that. The obvious tip is you don't use boxes. Well, it's really hard to tell some of my clients, if you remove the box and you just give it like an envelope, or there's a guy giving you the random reward, suddenly no one cares about the boxes anymore. That's like the simplest solution, okay? That's obvious. Okay, the next one is, instead of a loot box, you give them a loot table. So the loot table itself is attached to a system, and the loot table itself dictates what power you have. You remember World of Warcraft? You kill that boss, and there's a 10% chance my legendary sword drops. So you kill him 100 times, and then you have a legendary sword. It's as easy as it is. This is where it was invented in World of Warcraft. Remember that. So loot boxes enable you better control of the progress, because when you put different loot tables on different monsters in the game itself, you know that the player will come to this monster first and try to kill it until he's powerful enough, and he goes to the next monster, and then he kills them. This is how he progresses. So that system gives you a better control of the progression path of the player than loot boxes. In a loot box system, it can happen. You log into the game, first thing, you open box, legendary monster. This makes you so powerful that the first 10 hours is a breeze for you. Actually, it's pretty boring. That can happen. It rarely happens, but nevertheless, in this system, it does not happen. And it still can be monetized, right? So if I kill this monster and it doesn't drop, I kill it now. After 10 times, it still hasn't dropped my sword. I want, right? So what do? Well, I pay $10, go to that dealer, and I get loot tickets. And these loot tickets, 10 times, I press a button, and bam, I get 10 times the loot. Oh, there's my sword. Of course, you have to kill the monster first in order to apply the loot ticket to the monster, but even that system is already popular in some mobile games. It just saves time, right? But remember, if someone just pays money for your game and he buys his way through the whole power curve of the game itself, at the end he's bored and leaves. You don't want that. So be careful with that system, but nevertheless it works. Remember, World of Warcraft had that progression system, you know, where you basically went through different loot table instances to actually get your gear, because you have to beat this to be as powerful, to beat this to be as powerful, to beat this, etc. This was the raid endgame system. This is where you learn how loot tables can work. So instead of loot boxes, you can use loot tables if you're prepared to create such a system. And the lessons how that works are, you know, all over the internet in RPG design. Yeah. So how you can monetize loot tables is, you know, by activity currency, meaning that the more I kill a boss, I get a token. You know, if I killed him 50 times, I have 50 tokens of this boss. I can trade these tokens in for the item I want. So if I'm the unlucky player and I killed the boss 50 times and I still don't have my sword, I can take the 50 tokens, go to the dealer and say, okay, now I buy it. It's basically to buffer the unlucky player. The loot tickets, we talked about that. Disassembling dupes, meaning that if I kill the boss and I get duplicate items, I can actually use these duplicate items for good use. You can enhance drop chances. So I just buy a boost and the boost doubles my drop chance of legendary items. Now this stuff is very common in most of these games now. And enhancing items to the next tier, meaning that if I have an item, a legendary sword, and I maxed it out in terms of power, I can move that item to the next power tier by, they call it unbinding or breaking it in many games. That means that a legendary item lasts much longer than it's supposed to be in your power curve. But this is another way to actually monetize that. So this all boils down to classic free-to-play MMORPG design. And these lessons are 20 years old. Remember, free-to-play was invented for MMORPGs. So everything we talk about today, you can learn from MMORPGs by playing Chinese RPGs. It's all in there. Meaning that if you want to have loot boxes, it's obvious how you should do that. If you want to have loot tables, you have to learn from the MMORPGs. And the question is, do loot boxes monetize better than loot tables? Yes, they do. But if you do loot tables right, they monetize nearly as good. There are many games out there monetizing really good without loot boxes. But, you know, the reason why so many people use loot boxes is because they are so easy to do. It's really easy. Pack all your items together, put randomizer on it, you know, and wrap it in a box, in a gift box. That's the reason. Thank you. That was my quick take about loot boxes, and we are open for questions now, I guess.
Thank you for a great lecture. So you told a lot about that we need to learn looking to the past, to the old games, of Magic the Gathering. But do you see any trends, any changes in loot systems that could be very, very usable? And
Yeah.
because the main problem that most of the players now are familiar with this loot system, so can we provide some new experience with the loot system for these players?
Well, the trend with Asia already has since 2 years, because remember, Asia is like far ahead in terms of loot boxes, right? That they're actually multiplying the progression paths in the game. So loot box is not only the major power source, but there are like dozens of progression systems, and loot box is just one of them. So, you know, one good example, I just can, you know, play Rise of Civilizations. This is, it looks like a normal Game of War clone, but there are so many small little details in there which are extremely well polished and done. You will see how many progression paths they have. You know, the buildings, the heroes, the armies, the God knows what. And in the beginning you don't grasp it, but the longer you play, suddenly it opens up to multiple ones. So loot box is just one system in there. In Clash Royale, loot box is the system. In their game, it's just one of many. So this is basically the trend they have, right? They just shovel more progression systems and monetization system inside. This is the only thing, you know, about that question I can tell you. It's getting more deep, more complex, but it's very easy to use. Yeah. You just tap and you get stuff. In fact, in Rise of Civilization, you're getting so much stuff that you kind of lose track how much stuff you have. But this is another problem. Yeah. But you know, play that. I can just recommend this. Yeah.
Hi, I went to a talk of yours like 2 or 3 years ago, and at the time the popular feature were these Wheels of Fortune. And then you said that Wheels of Fortune usually don't work because user usually gets crap in return, and doesn't get what they want or need. So how are loot boxes different in that regard?
They are different because the wheels, the lucky wheels back then were just put into the game as a separate system. So you had your progression system in the game itself. You know, you got gold and items and stuff, and then there was this lucky wheel you could spin once per day, giving you random items. So it's just like the side thing, giving you one lucky roll per day, and you could pay to get more lucky rolls. So that doesn't work because it's kind of attached on top. While in these loot box games, you know, the loot box are basically inherited into the game itself, a natural part of it. You're in the game itself and you get the boxes, right? You kill something, you get a box, and you're really happy and you can't wait to open it up to see what's inside. The lucky wheel doesn't do that. You know, I just wanted to tell you back then that just adding systems on top of the game, which are not part of your world, which are just there for monetization purposes, they don't work. People are not stupid. They see this and say, you only did this and put this into the game to make money. No thanks. But if it's inside the game, they don't mind paying for it because, you know, it's making them more powerful. That's a major differentiation. Yeah.
Okay, thanks.
So we saw a lot of examples of like from Summoner's War onwards to Clash Royale, like what are they doing wrong, what can they fix, and so on. So what do you think, like right now on mobile, what game works with the loot boxes system like long term the best?
There's no best solution. If there would, you could Google it. If there would be the best solution, right? There's always a best solution for your genre. I can tell you that the most copied monetization system is the Clash Royale system. Because the Clash Royale monetization system has weak links to the core loop, right? The core loop is me against you, my cards against your cards. But all it does, it gives you a loot box. This is the only link between the core loop itself and the meta game. So the meta game itself, you can actually take out, you place it here, and you take the core loop and exchange it to anything. You know, there are hundreds of games now copying Clash Royale monetization 1-to-1. So that shows how well it works, even for other games itself. So I think for let's say PvP-based games, you know, you against me, it's a system which works okay, despite its weakness with the chess and so on. But there are games who are actually circumventing this, but still using Clash Royale system. In terms of long-term in-depth RPGs, you know, the Summoner's War system is the most copied system on Earth. So whatever, you know, I play all Asian RPGs who are coming out, like even the, you know, the soft launches and stuff, because I just love RPGs. And in the first 5 minutes, I see like 90% of their systems are ripped off from Summoner's War, or Puzzle and Dragons, you know, which is based on this. And it's just a 10% difference which makes this game special. And that, you know, I get bored really quickly. So we're desperately trying to look for an RPG which is finally different, you know, going there, but we can't find any. It's always the same. So on RPG, look at Summoner's War. You know, let's say PvP-based or small arena type of base, you know, look at Clash Royale. It's really a no-brainer. Yeah.
Yeah, but yeah, I mean that answers the question, because those like right now long-term market trends, live PvP and RPG games they both have like spikes, crazy spikes.
Yeah, but you know, if too many are releasing the same genre games, only the genre is dead and only the top 3 survive. If you try to fight against the agents in the RPG space, good luck, because you know there is one major RPG release per week on mobile, like full features MMORPGs with hundreds of hours of content, graphics, you know, complex systems, everything there. Clan wars, you know, all the subsystems you find in any game it's all in there. They release 1 per week minimum. It's incredible, you know. And if you want to compete as a European against these 5,000 developers creating a game every 3 months, good luck. That's really tough space. So you have to find your ideas strategic, you know, smart, where there's least competition, but where you still can excel. But that's a different topic. Yeah.
Other questions? What do you think about like complementary systems that work with loot boxes together, like Battle Pass from Fortnite or the one from Dota? I mean, can they help?
They are very special cases. Here's the thing: PvP games are very, very tough to monetize in free-to-play, because what people do is they buy power. But if I can buy power, it's unfair in PvP. So how do you balance that? And in Clash Royale, they balance that through their deck building and the arena. The arena basically is your power level. The more power you buy, the higher you get in the arena really, really fast. In Fortnite, that's not possible. You cannot buy power. So they have to find another system. So they sell you cool looking stuff, which you have to grind over time for free. But if you don't have the time to do that, you can basically ease up that process by paying in 2 steps, like the small pass or the big pass. And it's a very special system just for them. It might work for other survival games or PvP games, but in terms of PvP monetization, there are currently just 3 major systems which work. PvP, So that's the reason why I don't recommend doing PvP games at all, because it's fucking hard to do. Pure PvP games. PvE/P is okay.
Also got another question about those loot boxes scandals. You're an online games expert, but still you should know, you probably saw this. In 2017, Shadow of War released, and it's like a single player game with a multiplayer mechanic that is like 3% of the game. And they had loot boxes, but then the scandal with loot boxes at EA happened, like at the same time. And at March 2018, they removed it, even though it's a single player game. It doesn't affect PvP, it doesn't affect balance.
Yeah.
Do you think
but if it's a single player game, you should go with loot tables and not with loot boxes, right?
Yeah, I mean, do you think that they were just scared of loot boxes scandals and they just removed them so they won't get in the fight? Or
you have to ask them, but you should not be scared about loot boxes. If you put them in right, everybody's happy. I mean, imagine you open a box and you get an item, someone here paid $100 for, and when you get lucky, you're like really happy. You're like, that feeling can't be beaten. Really, can't be beaten. Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
We're done.
Thank you.
Thank you, Teut.